Good afternoon, Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. We have with us returning guest Justin Amash, former congressman. He's now running for the Senate in Michigan. Justin, I really hope you get the nomination and I hope you get the seat. I think you'd be a great asset to the Senate, period, and a discussion. Before we start, I do want to point out that you had just messaged me as we record that Thomas Massey's wife of 35 years has passed away this morning. So we'll dedicate this episode in her memory. It's just a very, very tragic. She was quite young, early 50s, and I know you're friends with both of them. So this is just a very sad way to start this interview. Um,
Yeah, it's really heartbreaking news. Thomas is a good friend. I've known Rhonda as well for many years, and just to hear about it and very sudden, unexpected, our heart goes out to them, and may her memory be eternal.
yeah, that actually segues to the next question, which I had planned, which I was going to be a little facetious about. So let's see if we can still pull that off, which is you're young, great resume, charismatic, articulate. I'm sure you got a JD, great Rolodex. I'm sure your wife's a lovely woman. I know you're really into being a dad. Last time we interviewed, you had your kids' pictures on the wall behind you. Why are you putting your family through this? I mean, Michigan's a great place. Do you really need this?
Yeah, I think that we have to have someone doing this right now. I mean, I looked at this race, and you had Alyssa Slotkin on the Democratic side and Mike Rogers on the Republican side. You have two people who are the most pro-surveillance state, pro-war,
Oh God.
pro-spending, just basically the worst kind of senators you could possibly have if they're elected. And so I saw myself as a person who was ideally suited to take them on. I feel like I'm young enough and energetic enough where I can still get out there. I've had this time away from Congress for the past few years, where I've had the opportunity to spend with my family, seeing my kids do all their school activities for the past several years. That meant a lot to me because I was gone for a long time, back and forth with Congress, and to spend those past few years with them has meant a lot to me. And I feel energized, and they're on board. They want me to do it, to go out
Okay.
and succeed. And so, yeah, it's a challenge, but it's something they believe in.
I did not realize that other Republican candidate is one of these Mike Pence horror
Oh, yeah.
shows.
He's worse than Mike Pence. Yeah,
Oh, is it really?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, God. Okay. So you have even more of my support. I mean, I don't know if you saw this, but and I know you can't endorse this as a politician, but Mike Pence had a tweet about how Julian Assange is just the devil and all this other stuff, and I just replied with "You belong in Gitmo," and I got 3 times the likes that he did. But can you talk a bit about the surveillance state and opposition to it from within Washington and why it's such a I know my opinion, but I want to hear from your mouth about why it's such a horrible thing.
Well, I mean, it's horrible because the government is doing stuff that a lot of us don't even know about. They're monitoring our activities. I mean, we had the opportunity as members of Congress to go and read some of the classified information, to see the stuff behind the scenes, and it's even worse when you go read that stuff. And a lot of times, they're even ambiguous with members of Congress. You'll get these executive branch staffers and intelligence committee staffers who will come in, and they're not disclosing completely to us what's going on. So if you have, even for the people who are like me and Thomas Massey and some others who have gone there and worked hard to try to get that information, if instead you have someone over there in the Senate who is
Yeah.
actually working with the executive branch, working with the intelligence committees to make sure that the government is spying on you, I mean, it's like it's 10 times worse. So for me, it's about protecting people's rights. That's why you're elected as a member of Congress. The purpose of government, to the extent you have government, the purpose of it is to protect people's rights. It's not to provide everything to everyone. It's not to, go out of its way to spy on everyone, to ensure that there's like a national security state. That's not why we have government. The purpose of government is to protect people's rights, protect people's liberty, and so I feel very strongly about it. And we have these candidates now in this race in Michigan who are doing the opposite. They want to go there and expand the surveillance state, expand government, and it's really, I mean, it's mind-boggling that they're even candidates, honestly.
Yeah, it's as someone who's born in the former Soviet Union, who's written about the USSR, this American version, the KGB, and how it's cheerleaded shamelessly. I can even wrap my head around in the corporate press. I could wrap my head around it if people like look, like yeah, this sucks, but we gotta kind of grit our teeth and deal with this because otherwise the cost is like 9/11 every day. But there's not even this pretense that there's a cost. It's just all supposed to be upside. We're all supposed to be happy about it, and are you have you seen in your campaigns and your time in Congress what I seem to have seen from my smaller vantage point, that there seems to be a far bigger awareness among both Republicans, independents, and some Democrats that what we're being told as how the intelligence community operates isn't how it works in practice, and the far too often the target isn't so-called terrorists but average American citizens.
Yeah, I believe that. I believe that they are going after average American citizens. They claim that they are targeting other people. They always say we're targeting foreign adversaries or we're targeting terrorists. But in reality, what they're doing is sweeping up a whole bunch of information on everybody. And I think that's what they actually find valuable. I don't
Yeah,
think it's the target, the target they're going after that they, or they claim they're going after that they find valuable. I think what they want is all of that data on all of us so they can keep us in check, so that they know what we're doing at any point in time. And at some point, as technology continues to evolve, you're going to have an all powerful state that can shut off your transactions, that will decide everything you're doing from day to day. And we're not going to have much recourse if we let this happen. So we have to take a stand now. We have to say no and put the ground rules in place now and have people in there, because I think you know this better than anyone. Um, the government on its own, the Constitution, that's not going to protect you on its own.
right.
You have to have virtuous people. You have to have the right people who are going to go and actually uphold something like the Constitution or uphold people's privacy protections. If you have a constitution and nobody cares about it, it's just a piece of paper.
Yeah. We are recording this the day after last night's presidential debate, which is one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my lifetime, and I'm sure in yours. Let's talk about you personally and then about the debate yesterday. The elephant in the room, but let me just take a step back. When someone changes my mind about something, they will earn my respect forever. And there's very few people who have done this, in part thanks to my enormously disproportionate ego. And you were one of them, because one of the big questions you always get asked is you supported the articles of impeachment for President Trump. And when you were on my show and I asked you about it, you go, more presidents should be impeached. I'm like, all right, sold, Team Justin. Like, I get it. That's great. I'm sure this is getting you pushback with some Republican voters and with the Michigan party itself. Can you talk about that, whether that's hindering your campaign or is that not being an issue as much?
I don't think it's hindering it to the extent that maybe some people thought it would be. I mean, you definitely get some pushback because there are people who only know about you because of that. There are
Right.
some people out there, that's the only thing they know about you. And if that's all they know about you, yeah, you've got a lot of bridge building. You know, you've got to, really teach them about what your history is and what you've done. But I served in Congress for 10 years here. So, people in this community, at least in the west, on the west side of the state, and a lot of people on the east side of the state as well, they know what I'm about. They know I believe in the Constitution. They know I believe in limited government, economic freedom, individual liberty. They know what I stand for. I'm a constitutional conservative. I'm a libertarian, and so when they see me do something like go after a president of my own party, they understand that I'd also do that toward a president of another party, and it's not about which party the person's in. I think that Joe Biden has committed multiple impeachable offenses. And if articles of impeachment came up for Joe Biden, I'd vote for them. The same would have been true for Barack Obama. Now, people say, well, you didn't vote for impeachment for Obama. Well, articles of impeachment didn't come up. I didn't write the articles of impeachment for
Right.
Donald Trump. They came up and then I have to vote on them. Like I do believe that when you bring up articles of impeachment, you should have some understanding that there's an ability to move it forward. There's enough. I mean, it shouldn't be just one person saying, "Hey, I want to impeach the president." Everyone else is against them, because then you're just wasting everyone's time. But if articles come up, then I'm going to vote the way I believe. And from my perspective, the way I look at it, if I do it to a Democratic president, then I do it to a Republican president, and it's as simple as that.
Would you have, if you had been in the House, would you have voted to forward the articles of impeachment against Secretary Mayorkas that just passed?
I think so. I didn't follow the issue closely enough, but yeah, I think I would.
I like this idea. It's like the default should be like, yeah, send him to the Senate. Like there should be more of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And the trial is in the Senate. Like,
Right.
I think that's an important thing to point out. Impeachment is an indictment. It's not the trial. It's not conclusive. It doesn't mean you're voting to remove the person from office. It's an indictment. I think that gets lost a lot of times too. The threshold for me on impeachment on the House side is pretty low. On the Senate side, it would be a higher threshold.
Folks, I want to talk to you about Lumen, which is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs, and it gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workouts, sleep, and even stress management. All you got to do, breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. Then it gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. You can also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals, so you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. And Lumen will give you tips to keep you on top of your health game. Your metabolism is your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food you eat into fuel that keeps you going. Do you want to be an underwear model like me or just look like one? Well, Lumen will help you achieve those goals. So, if you want to take the next step in improving your health, if you want to have recommendations that improve your metabolic health and give you information about what it is that your body is doing that'll help you improve your energy and give you better sleep and so much more, go to lumen.me/malice to get 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/malice for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. Let's get back to the show. Um, one of the things you pointed out, which really resonates with me after we spoke, because I had asked you last one time you were on whether DC is more like Veep or more like House of Cards, and the point you made is that you were shocked to what extent like no one cares about policy. That it's just really like just total power. Like it's even more just power games behind the scenes than people realize. And there's an example I think of often when I was a student at American University. We had a speaker come in, and he was a lobbyist, and he said told the students, he goes, "This is how it works. I could have a bill, and if I want the Democrats to vote on it, I'll call it the Farm Fairness Bill, and then I could cross it out and call it the Farm Freedom Bill, and have the Republicans vote on it, and literally it would be verbatim the same bill." And that was such a revelatory moment for me. I'm curious, after watching last night's debate, and again, it's very clear the Democrats, just like the Republicans, want to have the White House. What do you think is going on behind the scenes in Washington today? Are the phones like literally exploding?
Yeah, I think Democrats are trying to find a way out of this. Now, I don't know if they can find a way out of this, and it seems like it should have been an obvious problem. I mean, for a long time. I mean, I've been talking privately to my family and friends for a long time that this is political malpractice by the Democrats. I mean, there are people who argue, well, the Republicans are committing malpractice by having Trump again, but actually, Trump's, I think, in a pretty strong position to win, and Biden, if you had a real candidate, I think against Trump, you'd have a strong shot on the Democratic side right now, to pull it off. And they're putting up a guy who can't really think clearly. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that debate last night. I mean, it was really shocking, and I was gonna post on X. I was gonna say the winner of the debate was the 25th Amendment because and I held back, but really, I mean, the guy is president right now.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's kind of scary. And there are people who say, "Well, we're just voting for an administration." But look, people vote for a president. This is the person who decides things. The buck stops at the top with the president of the United States, and you have to have someone with a clear mind, even if that person has views you disagree with. I think you want someone with a clear mind.
You just inspired me. I'm gonna tweet out right now. Because I'm not as nice as you. So can we all agree that Biden's performance last night was quote downright Wilsonian? Um, I do you think but let's talk about from the Republican side.
Mhm.
Is there I've always made the case, and you would know this infinitely better than I do, that there's an enormous amount of reticence among the Republican establishment for having Donald Trump as head the ticket, both in terms of electoral success and both in terms of him being kind of a bit of a loose cannon. He's certainly not a team party player, as you know, like a George H.W. Bush would have been, for example. Is that the sense you're getting from your context as well?
I That's never been my perception of it. Like,
Okay.
okay, so I think that the establishment rhetorically says they can't stand Trump, they don't like his style and all that. I From my perspective, having served in Congress, I think he was the best thing that ever happened to the establishment. I don't think they've ever had someone who could produce for them better than Donald Trump produced.
Okay.
When I was in Congress prior to Donald Trump, we were always butting heads with the establishment. Those of us who are more conservative, more libertarian, butting heads with the establishment, and we were starting to rack up some real wins up to about 2014, 2015. We were starting to make some real headway and knock them down a bit. Then Donald Trump came in, and I think what he was really good at was obviously rallying the base. He's an unbelievable campaigner. I think he's the best campaigner of all time. And this doesn't mean I agree with him or agree with his style or think he's, ethical or moral or anything like that. What I'm saying is he's the best campaigner of all time. And what the establishment understood, Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy and a bunch of others, what they understood was they could use this man effectively to get their legislation across the finish line. So whenever we
Right.
had a situation where conservatives or libertarians were going to stop something, block something, prevent something from getting reauthorized, Donald Trump would come in and say, "Oh, it's not so bad. This is the good version of it, or you should support this." So a lot of times we're talking about things like FISA reauthorization, the Patriot Act reauthorization, a bunch of spending bills. It was Donald Trump who sealed the deal on those things, who came to the conservatives and said, "Hey, you've got to stand with us. You have to vote for this thing. It's important." And then he'd always promise, like, later on we'll fix whatever, or we'll do something better in the future. But this is stuff that wouldn't have passed, in my opinion, without Donald Trump being there. I mean, we had made some real headway, and I feel like he came in and really gave Mitch McConnell most of what he wanted. I can't think of many things over the past few years where Mitch McConnell didn't get the outcome he wanted, and a lot of it was thanks to Donald Trump.
Mitch McConnell has announced that he'll be stepping down as Senate Majority Leader going forward. There obviously is going to be a lot of jockeying behind the scenes to see who his replacement would be. As a senator, your vote would be crucial, especially from a purple state. Your vote would be crucial in determining who that next leader would be. No one has officially announced because they don't want to cross the king while he's still in the throne. But of the senators who's kind of been whispering behind the scenes, are there any whose candidacies for majority leader you'd prefer over others?
I mean, no, not of the ones who are not of the ones who are the main names out there. I mean, let's be honest, like they're going to be pretty much the same.
Okay.
Of the main names that are out there. If you got someone like a Rand Paul in there, maybe a Mike Lee or someone who would actually do it a little differently, okay, I think you get a change. But if we're talking about the people who are already lined up, they've been lined up for years, I
Right.
think you're pretty much going to get the same thing, whether you have one or the other. I'm not saying they won't marginally be different, but look, I've said this before, you have to have a revolution in Congress.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not talking about tinkering or changing things at the edges, at the margins. We're talking about a revolution. It has to work completely differently. And I don't think any of the people we're talking about are going to do that.
Well, let's talk about who I regard as both ironically and non-ironically my favorite senator, who is John Fetterman.
Yeah, I
Um,
knew you were going to go there.
well, I mean, in terms of leading a revolution, I think anyone who's a literal Frankenstein's monster is probably the best person to get people to have their pitchforks and torches up. Are you heartened, as I am, to see how much Fetterman has gone off script and how much he's trying to both bring the Democratic Party to the center, but also to act as I seem to seem that you act as a public servant, someone who does not take himself as seriously and thinks he's there to help the people and be accountable to them as opposed to the lobbyists and the establishment.
So I have a lot of policy disagreements with John Fetterman,
Mm.
as you probably do as well.
Of course.
But I think it is a positive thing when people speak their minds, break from their party, are willing to challenge people within their own party. I think that's all a positive thing to do. So, in that sense, I am heartened. I think that you want to see more senators doing that. We can have all sorts of policy disagreements, but for me, the people that I like to work with in Congress when I served there were the people who were willing to challenge their own party and speak for themselves and had their own minds and were independent. If you were just going to go there and press the button for party leadership on everything, or whatever your base is saying, that's what you got to do on that particular day, you were basically worthless as a member of Congress, because anyone can do that. I mean, you could take anyone off the street, pay them some money, and
Yep.
say, just press the button that you're told by the leadership. And that's pretty much what most of them do. This is why I've often said, if you want to go to Congress and just be a stooge for party leadership, it's the easiest job in the world. There is honestly no easier job. Any person could do it. Any person. That's why you do have some of these members of Congress who clearly just are not that bright. They're not that good at things. I don't think they'd be good at many other jobs. And it's why they want to hold on to it so dearly. We've talked about this before. A lot of them just are not very ambitious even. They're not that ambitious.
Yeah.
Like they're happy to be there. They got to Congress and they're happy to be there. They're not that ambitious. They're not even necessarily like malevolent. They just are happy to be there. They want to press the button. They want to be told they're good, and have people cheer for them and announce them at dinners and stuff. That's all they care about. And it's a super easy job if that's the kind of job you want. And if you want to actually represent the people, follow the Constitution, it can be a challenging job. It can be a difficult job.
Yeah. What's interesting this year is that the three of the senators who are the most likely to buck their party, specifically Mitt Romney on the Republican side, Kristen Sinema on the Democratic side, and Joe Manchin on the Democratic side. Sinema and Manchin both left the Democratic Party, became independent, still caucusing, of course, with the Democrats. All three of them are retiring. So it really seems that. Can you explain this phenomenon? Because it seems that, is it a sign that the parties are in such control of Washington that there's no room for wiggle room, or is it the fact that they're losing control so badly that they really need all hands on deck because the ship's falling apart?
Well, I think there are a lot of factors that come into play. And when you have a very close electorate where the Senate is really close, the House is really close, what ends up happening actually is the public becomes more partisan. The public start to say, we don't want a cinema, we don't want a mansion, we want a team player, because they get worried about, well, if we don't control it, then the other evil people are going to control it. So we have to have all people working together. So there's some sense in which there's a lot of public pressure. It's not just from leadership. The leaders, yeah, they provide the pressure, but the public is there pushing back and saying, we don't want to take any chances. We don't want, evil Mitch McConnell in control.
Right.
So you better like line up and fall in line behind Schumer. So I think that's a big part of it, and that's probably what drives these people out of Congress.
Um, what you famously left the Republican Party, became the highest ever Libertarian Party politician in America. What made you decide to return to the Republican Party for your Senate run?
In the state of Michigan, the rules are so convoluted and complicated for someone who's outside of the two major parties
Okay.
that it is almost impossible to get on the ballot and to be successful. So you have, for example, if you were to run as an independent, you have to collect twice the number of signatures as someone running in the two major parties. Instead of 15,000 signatures, you're talking about 30,000 signatures. Now, collecting those signatures is not a cheap endeavor, because you have to have the manpower to do
Yeah.
it. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars spent just on signature collection. If you have to spend twice that much on signature collection, you're blowing through a lot of your campaign resources just getting on the ballot. And then in Michigan, you have straight ticket voting.
Right.
So once you get to the ballot on election day, if you're not running in the two major parties, you're probably losing something like, 60-70% of the electorate right at the top of the ballot. They're picking Republican or Democrat, and they're not even checking the rest of the ballot. So if you're not in one of the major parties, you're out of the game. My view is parties are a tool to organize people to win elections. They're not something you should hold dear to in the sense of, like this is the be all end all. They shouldn't be your identity. It shouldn't be like this is my identity. And I've never presented myself to constituents in all my years in Congress. I never said vote for me because I'm a Republican. It's never happened. Never said it once. So I've always uh, told people vote for me because you support me as a representative, and now I'm saying support. If you support me as a senator, vote for me. I would caucus with the Republican Party because I feel like I'm closer to the Republicans than I am to the Democrats. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to line up with Republicans on everything. And the party to me again is just an organization to help you win elections, and it shouldn't really be anything beyond that.
Hey folks, Michael Malice here. You might know me as a Twitter troll, terrible author, insufferable podcaster, but I'm also an underwear model, and the underwear that I model and wear every day is Sheath underwear. If you go to sheathunderwear.com, use promo code Malice, you get 20% off and you can be inside my pants. Why I love Sheath is they have special dual pouch technology for both parts of your male anatomy. It sounds weird. The first time I tried them on, I'm like, what is this? And now I literally wear them every day. The great thing about Sheath, it was developed by an Iraq war veteran. And overseas, it gets really, really hot. And Bobby decided, all right, what can I do to make sure I'm not suffering here in this heat? And thanks to his research, you can be comfortable in the comfort of your own home. It's great for cold weather. It's great for hot weather. It keeps you secure and comfortable. And there's something really exciting about going on a job interview, going on a date, doing a podcast, knowing that your underwear has you in its grip, nice and secure and comfortable. Go to sheathunderwear.com, use promo code Malice. You get 20% off, and you can get one step closer to looking as much like a hunk as myself. Folks, traditional bed sheets can harbor more bacteria than a toilet seat, which can lead to acne, to allergies, to stuffy noses, and it is gross. Miracle Made offers a full line of self-cleaning, eco-friendly bedding such as sheets, pillowcases, and comforters that prevent 99% of bacteria and require 3 times less laundry. They're infused with silver, and that prevents up to 99.7% of bacterial growth, which leaves them staying cleaner and fresher 3 times longer. No more gross odors. And by using these silver-infused fabrics, which were inspired by NASA, the Miracle Made sheets are thermoregulating and designed to keep you at the perfect temperature all night long, so you get better sleep every night. They're very comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands. Stop sleeping on bacteria. Miracle Made sheets are designed for your skin. Bacteria can clog your pores. It causes breakouts and acne. Sleep clean with Miracle. Here's all you got to do. Go to trymiracle.com/malice to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our promo Malice at checkout, you get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you aren't 100% satisfied, full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/malice. Use code Malice to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/malice to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. Let's get back to the show. One of the things that you mentioned previous times we spoke is how gladdened you are sometimes were you to be in a position to use the power of your office to help your constituents. And it's like, you know what, I could do that. I help this person who's struggling. That's something I pat myself on the back for. And that makes a lot of sense to me. Something that you could help a lot of people with right now who are listening to this, especially young people, is I imagine one of the most annoying aspects of running for office is fundraising. Working those phones, having asked for money, I'm sure you feel dirty at first. Maybe you kind of get used to it, but everyone has to do it. People pretend otherwise, but they don't. Can you give young people who may be trying to start a business, crowdfunding, people who have to fundraise, what advice would you give them to be effective about it and kind of get over that issue of like, oh God, I got to work the phones and kind of, have my hat in hand.
It is difficult. When you call someone up and you ask for funds, you have to be upfront. You have to tell them what you need, why you need it, and how it will make a difference. And I think a lot of people, um, they call people up and they say, I need some money, but they're not direct enough. They're not telling them what they're going to use the resources for. They're not telling them why it's so important and how it's going to affect either the person they're talking to or other people in society. So you have to develop, in some sense, a thick skin. You have to be willing to take criticism. You have to be willing to accept that someone's going to push back. Not everyone's going to like that you're asking them for money. Not everyone's going to accept it in the same way. You're going to be rejected a lot of times. I mean, for me, like the vast majority of people I contact don't contact me back. And that's
Yeah.
very typical. That's true of everyone who asks people for support and help. The other thing you have to be able to understand and appreciate is, people are in different circumstances. Sometimes they can't help you even though they're your friend. They're going through a difficult time. You have to accept that. And sometimes you learn who your real friends are through this process too. You see people who you clearly do have the ability to help you out, but aren't just aren't that interested in helping you at a time when you need it. And then someone you thought was not really that close to you, didn't care about you that much, that person will go out of their way for you. They'll say, "Yes, I'm absolutely there to help you, and I'm willing to reach out to other people to find more people to help you." And so it can be both like a difficult time in the sense that you see people who are close to you who are not necessarily with you, but also a time where you find new friendships, new people who are willing to go out on the line for you.
I think it's gonna be easier for someone like you in a sense to make that ask because you kind of people know what they're getting. It's like,
Yes.
listen, when I go to Congress, this is how I'm going to vote, and you do it, and it's like it's not you're not I'm not going to get you an airport, but I'm going to vote for kind of a minimalist constitutionalist vote. If that's what you want, you support me. If not, you're not going to get it. So I think it's really kind of easier when someone has an ideology and is willing to be putting that ideology into practice.
Yeah, and I just tell people the same thing, and that's exactly right. I'm not promising them any kind of concrete measure for them. What I'm telling them is I'm going to go to Congress and I'm going to be principled. I'm going to talk about the principles I believe in, and I'm going to follow those principles. And sometimes that means they're going to get an outcome they like, and sometimes it means they're going to get an outcome they don't like. But if you want that kind of representation, then you vote for me. And if you don't want that, then don't vote for me, don't support me, don't donate to me. That's okay. But it is better to have, a sense of who you are and to present that very clearly to people. If you're the kind of person, just starting out and you're calling people and you don't really know who you are, you don't really understand what you're going to
Yeah.
do, you don't have a set of principles, it can be very difficult because now every conversation is some kind of transaction, and that it can't work that way. It can't be transactional in that sense, if you want to be successful. Plus, I want to say to young people who are doing this, it gets easier as you go on because you do develop an identity that people understand. If you stay true to yourself, you develop an identity they understand. And also, you're past the first impression stage. I know it can be hard. I'm sure you feel the same way, whether it's calling someone on the phone or doing a town hall or whatever it might be. The first impression stage is tough because you're concerned, what do these people think about me? I'm way past that now. So when I go into a room or I make a phone call, I know people already have all sorts of impressions of me. They have an idea of who I am and what they think about me. And in some ways that's comforting. It's a lot easier. And if they want to confront me about something, it's okay. I already know that they've thought that for a long time. And so let's just have at it. Let's talk about it.
That's funny you're saying that because, you are a family man, politician. I'm a mental patient, so I'm going to be speaking at a university in the fall, and I would never do this because I'm not a fan of academics, but the professor asked me someone whose work I was familiar with and I admire, so I said yes. And I've already been Googling how to get a, Good Humor Ice Cream Man outfit. so I could tell the class, like, look, I don't like academics, but I want to make sure my talk went well, and I know kids like ice cream. So the audience will love it, and the faculty will just think, who is this clown? Which works perfectly for me.
Yeah,
But to your
absolutely.
point, first impressions, if I didn't have a name, then it would really, be a lead balloon. But when people know who you are and they know what they're getting, it's much easier to kind of interact with them and kind of even have a little bit of fun, because it's like you don't have to take yourself too seriously because they know who you are.
Yeah, that's right, and I don't even mind the tension, like, if someone doesn't like me for some reason, that's fine. I mean, you are at the point where when you've been doing this for a while, whether you're in your business or my line of work, where you start to accept that people aren't going to like you all the time, and you know how to handle it a lot better. I had I've had people come up to me and hand me notes that weren't very kind, and then I've had conversations with them right there after they handed me the note. I don't get into like a big argument with them or anything like that. I think most people, they work on emotions initially, and you'll find that if they don't really know you as a person, they can be really harsh. And if you take the time to just talk to them as a person, it really dilutes a lot of that tension.
Yeah, they feel validated, they feel seen. So
Yeah,
instead of you being this ambiguous, amorphous enemy, you're a human being also, and it's really hard to be that nasty to somebody else face to face.
yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of messages, I don't know if you know this, but one of my favorite historical bits of trivia is in 1932 during the campaign, President Hoover got handed a telegram that said, "Vote for FDR and make it unanimous." So that was a great little bit of history. Speaking of which, I know you're going to get this question constantly on the campaign trail. Uh, you you left the Republican Party, came back. Have you decided who you're going to vote for president?
I haven't decided. It's not going to be Biden. It's not going to be Trump.
Okay.
But I haven't decided.
Were you at the Libertarian convention, and what do you think of that ticket?
I wasn't at the Libertarian convention. I mean, I think that Chase is a strong candidate. I mean, if you just look at the the principles he has as a candidate, he really does embody a lot of the principles of libertarianism and the Libertarian Party. Now, there are always going to be people who disagree with candidates on particular items or the way they present themselves. He doesn't present himself the same way that a lot of people within the Libertarian Party present themselves. But in any political party, if you're going to be successful, you have to have a wide range of styles
Mhm.
and a wide range of viewpoints. And that doesn't mean that his will be necessarily the most successful approach, but it doesn't mean it can't be a successful approach given the circumstances. I think in this election, it's very difficult to break through to Republicans and Democrats and get them to leave their candidates because you have Trump versus Biden, and everyone is so worried about the other guy that the third party candidates, whether it's Kennedy or Chase Oliver or anyone else, they're going to have a hard time getting traction because people are so nervous about the two leading candidates.
Yeah, people have this misunderstanding that if the two-party candidates are both hated, it's an opportunity for third party, but that's actually when it's hardest for third party,
That's
because
right.
both tribes are like, if this other guy gets in, it's a wrap. We don't have a chance to kind of waste our vote, quote unquote waste. I don't want to say waste on the
And I
third.
know that better than anyone
Yeah.
because I did a presidential exploratory committee in 2020. And initially, before I did that, I thought, well, maybe I'll get some traction here. And what I found after doing it for a few weeks was actually the opposite is true. It just too many people have dug in their heels. They
Yeah.
want to go Republican or Democrat because they want to stop the other guy. It's like the fear of the other guy makes the third party candidate untenable. Like you can't risk your vote on this person.
I'm curious to. So one of the things you hear from the Democratic Party and left of center journalists, but I repeat myself, is that Trump is an existential threat to our democracy. There's also this idea among what I call like Greta Thunberg conservatism that if Biden gets in again, it's the end of America. We're always one Democratic term away from America being a wrap. Do you think either of these viewpoints are valid, and how concerned are you that we're facing, the existential threat to America?
And people say this every 4 years. They say if the person wins, America's over. And from my perspective, just looking at the country, are we in dangerous times? I think we're in dangerous times. But do I think that means America's over if one or the other wins? I don't think so. I mean, this has been it's a very resilient country. I think we have a very resilient system. I know you and I might disagree a little bit about the Constitution and its value. I think that the Constitution has been extremely valuable in providing at least a guiding light to people.
Yeah, that's
It
true.
doesn't always work. But if you look at things like the First Amendment and the Second Amendment as good examples, there is no doubt that the reason they are better protected in this country than in any other country is because of our Constitution. Now, the Constitution's not perfect, it's not working perfectly. I mean, that people aren't upholding it perfectly, but there's no doubt that thanks to the Constitution, thanks to the Bill of Rights, we have better protections for freedom of speech and the right to keep and bear arms than any other country on the planet. And so I think we have a very resilient system. That doesn't mean we're not in trouble in many ways, but I wouldn't blame it on just Trump or Biden. Look at the system as it works in Congress. I've talked about this a lot. We've talked about it. We basically have an oligarchy. There's not really a representative system. And this is not just because of these two individuals, Trump and Biden. It's been like this for a while. They're just taking advantage of it, and they're the latest examples of it. But certainly, if Nancy Pelosi cared about democracy, she could have allowed some amendment votes during her time as Speaker, and yet she went 4 years without allowing any representative to come to the floor and offer an amendment. If she cares so much about democracy, she could have at least done that. So a lot of these people talk about democracy, and I'll criticize the Republicans the same way. They talk about democracy and representative government, and then they want to blame it on just Trump or Biden. But the reality is, they're not holding true to any of this stuff in their own lives. They're not holding true to it in Congress and in other institutions we have.
Folks, Homes.com knows that when it comes to home shopping, it's never just about the house or condo. It's about the home. And what makes a home is more than just the house or property, it's the location and the neighborhood. If you have kids, it's also schools, nearby parks, transportation options. That's why Homes.com goes above and beyond to bring home shoppers the in depth information they need to find the right home. And when I say in depth, I'm talking deep. Each listing features comprehensive information about the neighborhood, complete with a video guide. They also have details about local schools with test scores, state rankings, and student to teacher ratio. They even have an agent directory with the sales history of each agent. So, when it comes to finding a home, not just a house, this is everything you need to know all in one place. Homes.com. We've done your homework. Let's get back to the show. Let's talk a bit about foreign policy, which as a senator, you're going to have a lot to deal with. I was extremely upset when I heard that you lost family in this nightmare that's currently going on in Gaza. One of the things that I tried to point out in my last book, The White Pill, is when people talk about war and you have these statistics, it kind of people's eyes glaze over. But when you talk about actual individual stories, and these are people who are husbands, fathers, mothers, wives, children, uh, the horrors of war become much more real, and people get a lot less bloodthirsty and a lot more like, guys, this is really crazy, let's pull back. So I would love to give you the opportunity to tell the story of your relatives so people can realize this is happening to actual people, and this isn't just something that you can just shrug off.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it was devastating for us to hear that our relatives had been killed in an Israeli airstrike. They were sheltering in a church, an Orthodox church. They're Christians, and had been sheltering there. And part of a wall collapsed within one of the buildings at the church and crushed several of them. So that was really hard, especially knowing that these are my dad's first cousins and the descendants of those of the first cousins. And these are people who fled already in 1948. So they were expelled from their homes previously and had come to Gaza seeking refuge. I was fortunate in that my dad and his immediate family were able to become refugees and come to the United States. So, we were able to come here. We're blessed to be here. Um, and some of our relatives, though, they stayed over there. And it is difficult. I mean, I have relatives there. We probably have about, it's hard to say because the families intermarry, and it's hard to say how many relatives. Some of them are more distant cousins, but let's say we have about 30 relatives there living in Gaza, and um, they're in fear every day. They're traumatized. I have one cousin who has contacted me and said just the other day, a drone came in through the third floor window in his apartment building and just started firing.
Oh
And
my
they
God.
were fortunately sleeping on the first floor, and so they were safe. But it was extremely traumatizing to them. They went to the market, and they can barely get food and supplies. They went to the market, and an explosion went off at the end of the market, and they were there with little kids, and it's hard for them. They don't know what to do
Yeah.
because they don't want to leave. It's their home,
Yeah, of
it's their
course.
homeland, but they also are in fear that they won't survive. And so, yeah, it is a difficult thing. And the thing I would say to people at home is they're real people. We just talk about the numbers. Um, all of these people are real people with families, and they're scared. And we all obviously find what happened on October 7th abhorrent and evil, and we're completely against that. And attacks against anyone who's innocent is wrong. So we're completely against what Hamas has done, and their government at their institution. We have to also remember the people who are innocent
Yes.
civilians uh, throughout Gaza, and they're not just Muslims; there are Christians too. So it's people, whether they're Muslim or Christian or Jewish. We have to pray for them, love them, and care for them. They're just human beings who deserve our love and respect.
What's really kind of gross to me with there's a lot of glibness around this issue is where does this stop? Right? Like I don't hear anyone being even people like ceasefire now, Israel's evil, or on the Zionist side, like we need to continue. It's like what's your end game? Like, are you going to kill everyone in Gaza? Is that what you want? Are you going to kill everyone in Israel? That's not on the table. And I would the warfare state, and I would love to hear you talk about this. I have said many times when people are like, "What about Ukraine?" I was born in Ukraine when it was part of the Soviet Union. It's like it seems very clear to me that Zelensky had a gun to his head the whole time, being like, "You cannot settle with Putin." Like, we are going to make sure this war continues as much as possible. You and I and everyone listening to this, we're taught in school that war is a last resort. You only do this when it's absolutely necessary. But it's always the first. Like, people are tripping over themselves, these huge international corporations, because it's money for them and it's power for them. So I'm curious, from your experience in Washington, I would love to hear your impact about kind of the war machine and how that influences political votes.
Yeah, I think people have become too detached from what's going on. And
Yeah.
part of it is, if we're not sending troops, they especially become detached. They say,
Right.
well, it's no big deal because we're not sending troops. And I always say, there's a war going on, and we're a part of it, whether we're sending troops or not. And if we're a part of it, then you, as a member of Congress, should try to take some responsibility for it. And what's happening these days is members of Congress are doing what are essentially these easy votes. Okay, we'll send a bunch of money or weapons, we'll send it overseas, and then we'll just wash our hands of it and not worry about it. And if people want to do things with those weapons, it's not our business. And that's not acceptable from my perspective.
Yeah.
That's not an acceptable thing. It's not moral or ethical, but it's also not constitutional. It's not responsible. Um, when you are using taxpayer funds, the resources and power of the American government to fuel wars overseas, then you, as a member of Congress, should take some responsibility for that. The president of the United States, whoever it is, should say, look, I can't do this. We can't participate in this war in this way unless Congress says we support this war. So they should have to have a declaration of war in Congress if they want to do these things, whether it's in Gaza or in Ukraine or Russia, wherever it might be. If you want to be involved, then you'd better take a vote on it. And the reason they won't do that is because they know they can't sell that to the public. The public won't stand for it. And so instead, you have these sort of quiet proxy wars where you vote for the funding, you vote for weapons to be sent overseas, but then you say, "Oh, it's none of our business," and it's not going to be decided anyway until the parties over there decide it. We're just gonna send weapons, throw weapons into it, and and then let them handle it. And that's how these wars end up going on forever.
And
There's
also,
not any real understanding of what's at stake, and the American people are never told, "Hey, you're really a part of this. You should make a decision here."
and you're also making Americans targets, whether it's
Yeah,
through foreign
absolutely.
governments or foreign rogue actors. If you're funding all the guns that are killing people's families and countrymen, some people back there are not going to be very fond of it, and they're going to do something about it. And that's completely kind of Ron Paul, who's obviously you and I are huge fans of, made this point to Giuliani's face in the debates in 2012, and he got a lot of pushback. But now it's kind of been kind of accepted that, like, guys, if you keep going to other countries and bombing them, what, they're never going to send a bomb back, like, because we're the good guys, and we'll tell that to the people on the ground. You know what I mean? It's this insane, like, kind of Star Wars thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously any attacks on innocent civilians in the United States, that could never be justified. But
Right.
that doesn't mean that someone overseas who has a vendetta
Right.
doesn't try something. And so it doesn't mean that anyone is justifying it or saying it's okay. It just means that you are playing with fire when you do this stuff. You're creating a dangerous situation, and it could come back to bite us. And I worry about that a lot. I mean, I worry about our troops who might end up getting involved in conflicts. I mean, if stuff goes on long enough, it's possible American troops then do get involved. So you send them overseas, but it's also possible just innocent civilians here in the United States get harmed.
As a senator, one of the most important votes you're going to have to issues you're going to have to vote on is supporting Supreme Court justices. So I'm curious to hear how you would have voted for the last three justices, which were confirmed, which were Brett Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, and Ketanji Brown Jackson. If you had been in the Senate, would you have voted to pass those? How many of those would you have voted for?
Of the last three, I mean, based on what I knew at the time, because it's hard now
Of
we can
course,
do like,
yes.
on what I knew at the time, probably Coney Barrett. I would have supported at the time. I think Jackson is an interesting um, Supreme Court justice, and not doesn't fit neatly into the box that a lot of people want to put her in.
Yep.
I think that um, there's a lot of ways in which a libertarian could find her views appealing on certain issues, not on all the issues. So, do I think she was a pretty good pick from a Biden perspective? Yeah, I think that's probably about as good as you were going to get out of Biden. Um, Kavanaugh, I wasn't a fan of. I didn't view him as a particularly principled judge, and so I would have voted no.
Uh,
But again, it's different presidents and different circumstances, and Kavanaugh is maybe a bad one for Trump, and Brown Jackson's probably a good one for Biden.
Yeah, she gets a lot of heat from people when she was asked what a woman is. She says, "I'm not a biologist." And I'm like, this is what you guys want. You want a justice who's not going to have their preconceptions brought to a case. Because if you're going to have issues where you're facing trans issues, you want that judge to be like, all right, Lady Justice has a blindfold. I don't know anything. I'm going to hear your arguments for, okay, this person is a woman. I'm going to hear your arguments for this person is a woman. And I'm going to judge based on the evidence as opposed to my preconceptions that I'm bringing to the thing. So you would think, theoretically, conservatives would be like, okay, good. This is someone who doesn't have an agenda, but that all they heard is like, oh my God, she's not what a woman is. And they lost their minds on her.
Yeah, unfortunately, the hearings have become so, politicized
Right.
and partisan that I don't know that you get much out of them anymore. And every candidate, every nominee now is just saying, I can't answer things because they know that they're going to get eaten alive if they say anything, anyways. If she answered, she'd get attacked. And if she doesn't answer, she gets attacked. So there's not really a win. And probably in most cases, with most questions, if you know you're going to get attacked either way, it's probably safer to say less.
Yeah, it's funny because there's this conservative idea that all these justices are complete partisan hacks. And when Colorado tried to kick Trump off the ballot, I said, this is going to get overturned in probably 9-0. And all these people in my mentions were like, oh, even Ketanji Brown, even the DEI hire, and it was 9-0. And they were
Mhm.
shocked. I'm like, you shouldn't be shocked. Like, yeah, these people might be leftists, but they love the law. And they're really going to be very conservative in the sense of where before we do something radical and kick a president off a ballot, there really has to be a huge amount of evidence that validates this decision because we don't want to be the ones as the legal system to rip this country apart.
Yeah, and I think the Supreme Court gets a bad rap a lot of times for being too politicized. I think actually it's been one of the saving graces over the past, I don't know, few decades that has helped preserve the First Amendment, helped preserve the
Yes.
Second Amendment, and that includes even justices who some of them are on the left, and some of those people have helped at least to uphold these things in ways that I think is underappreciated.
How can people support your candidacy and work with you on your campaign?
You go to justinamash.com. We always can use resources. So the funds make a big difference to our campaign. If we have the funds to run this race, we'll win this race and we'll win it big. We're doing really well. It's been unbelievable the traction we have on the ground here. A lot of times, what you see on social media, doesn't give you the breadth of the campaign because this is it's largely a ground game. It's a very targeted operation because we have a Republican primary here that's going to be pretty low turnout, and so we're using our resources efficiently to get to the people who we're confident will go out and vote. But we need your help out there because we're up against the establishment and we're up against two people, a Republican and a Democrat, who are going to absolutely grow the surveillance state, grow the war state, increase spending, violate your rights. And this is our opportunity. I'm in a position to win this general election if I get through the primary, and we're in a great position to get through the primary. So I need everyone to get out there, support me at justinamash.com, volunteer if you can't donate, and please continue to follow me on social media and spread the message.
When is the primary, and can people still register to vote in it as of now?
Yes, you can register to vote. You can request an absentee ballot, and the primary is on August 6th. And in Michigan, it's an open
Oh,
primary,
wow. Okay.
meaning meaning it doesn't matter what your party is. We don't have party registration in Michigan. So if you like Justin Amash, if you're a progressive or a liberal, and you like some of my views on things because you're worried about Alyssa Slotkin, the Democrat, who's been terrible on civil liberties issues and terrible on war and surveillance. If you like my views better than hers, you can vote in the Republican primary. And so I'm asking everyone to get out there and vote on August 6th. It will make a difference. This is a low turnout, and what's going to matter is enthusiasm for the candidates. And I think we've got the enthusiasm on our side. We have people out there willing to vote for us. And my main primary opponent, Mike Rogers, he doesn't have enthusiasm. It's completely derivative. He only has the establishment support. It's all essentially, institutional people in Washington D.C. We've got people on the ground here, so please get out and vote. It will make a difference.
Yeah, if you vote for the establishment candidate, you're going to get the establishment running Washington. It's as
Yeah,
night follows day. So
absolutely.
this is an easy opportunity for people to make their voices heard and have a difference, especially when it's a low turnout primary and they can donate. Folks, head over to malice.locals.com where Justin will take a few questions from supporting listeners. Justin, again, you have my full support. I really hope you knock it out of the park and hold some of these just awful people accountable. Again, if people are going to vote for the establishment candidate, you don't really have a right. Well, you do have a right as an American, but fairly speaking, to complain about like, why does this keep happening? It's because you have the opportunity to change something and make that change. Justin, we're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of this interview?
Forgot I have to answer this. Well, my favorite part of the interview was, boy, I I always appreciate your kindness. So I don't know if that's a favorite part of the interview, but I feel like, and I've told people this, you get you have a reputation online
Yeah.
of being kind of a jerk to people. Like, your comments are a little snarky at times.
Yes.
And I've told people Michael Malice is one of the nicest people I've ever met. And he's always very kind and respectful. And so to me, that's always a blessing.
You are welcome.
Hi, it's Kellyanne Conway.
And I'm David Plouffe, and we have some surprising news. We're teaming up for a brand new podcast, The Campaign Managers.
I know what you're thinking. Why would Plouffe and Kellyanne do this?
Because frankly, Kellyanne, we disagree on just about every issue, except about what it takes to win a presidential campaign. Kellyanne ran Donald Trump's campaign. I ran Barack Obama's campaign. We understand things like early vote. We understand how to leverage an opportunity and how to play defense when you've made a mistake.
2024 is an election like none other. And David Plouffe and I are going to take you behind the scenes like no one else can.
We're going to lean into our one-of-a-kind experiences, really educate our listeners about what to keep an eye on, and discuss the current strategies and tactics that both campaigns are deploying on the campaign trail.
We're going to disagree, we're going to dissent, but we're going to deliver. You won't want to miss this unique pairing. Join us by listening to The Campaign Managers with Kellyanne Conway and David Plouffe.
The first episode is out May 22nd, available wherever you get your podcasts.
It's summertime, and with Pluto TV's Summer of Cinema, the streaming is easy. Stream hundreds of free movies on all your favorite devices all summer long. Chill out poolside with Mission Impossible and Transformers. Or stay cool inside watching Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, Titanic, or The Wolf of Wall Street. No matter your vibe, download the Pluto TV app to spend summer doing what you love. Watching endless movies. Tell me that's not the deal of the summer. Summer of Cinema on Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.